I love the birdie and the birdie loves me. Watch out, the Blackbird is coming.
Hello everyone, my name's Stonesy Boy and what? My name's Stonesy Boy and... Oh yeah, welcome back to Reading with Stonesy. Why did I forget that? That's like my line. Anyways, today we're reading pages 41 to 60 of this. It'll be this episode and next episode, and then we're done with the part 1 of the book, The Blackbird, and then we will be going on to The Real Jake. So, without further ado, let's begin. Noel tried closing his eyes. The sleep began to take him, and as soon as it did, images of impulsively huge wings scraped against his lids. When he felt gigantic feathers splintering against his entire body, he was pummeled by stiff elbow-length feathers. He could feel the drum against his skin in an eerie contrast of soft versus hard. How could something as light as a feather beat him with such power and force? Fear pushed up his sleep from consciousness. His eyes shot open. Flailing for the switch in the nightstand lamp, Noel listened to the thundering piece of his heart. Okay, that was alarming. What was that alarm? Was that a dream? Oh, it couldn't have been a dream because Noel had never fallen asleep. He just heard her falling asleep. Noel stood up and got a bottle of water from the fridge, drowning half of it, and he sat at the edge of the bed and steadied his breathing. It took several minutes, and he tried not to notice the hand was shaking when he took another sip of water. Noel sat down on the water bottle and then said, "Get a grip." He lay down once more. "Let's try this again," Noel said to the room. He reached over to turn this to the light. He closed his eyes, and someone or something opened the door to his room. Noel catapulted from the bed and knocked over his lamp, trying to turn it on. The bulb hit the wood floor and broke, so Noel ran across the room and flipped the wall switch. He was alone. The door of his room was closed and it was locked. Noel stared at the door. What just happened? Noel looked around, and in spite of how ordinary it looked, his room was suddenly threatening. He needed a weapon. Keeping one eye on the door, Noel crossed the closet and picked up an aluminum softball bat. Opening it up like a club, he sidestepped the door and he got a tighter grip on the bat. Then unlocked the door and he threw it open. The hallway was empty. Ominous music wafted up to this first floor. Lots of bass and percussion. Noel looked at the watch. The movie was probably still going on. Noel backed into his room and closed the door, locking it and leaned against it and ran a hand through his hair. What was going on with him? He looked at his hand in the bed and he stared at the doorknob. No way he was going to sleep unless he secured this door better. Feeling a little like an idiot, Sam used to say he was, Noel stepped out over the desk, grabbed his chair, and wedged the top of the back under the doorknob. Good thing he opted the wooden chair instead of a plush one with wheels his mother thought he should get. Once the chair was in its place, Noel looked at the shade over the window. The window was locked, right? Still clutching his softball bat, Noel checked into the window. Yes, it was locked. Good. Now you can stop acting like a paranoid mental patient, he asked himself. He didn't answer himself because he had no idea he could stop. It didn't seem like it was in control. Noel stood in the middle room for several more minutes. Then he decided there was no way he was going to sleep. He lighted his lamp and went into the closet for a broom, a dustpan, and a new bulb. After he cleaned up the broken bulb, he put a new one in the lamp. He grabbed his laptop and got into bed with it. He might as well work on a new screenplay he was writing. He hoped it would be a script he and Sam would use for the midterm project. Now, Noel shrugged. He knew what he was going to become of it. But working on it might take his mind off of insanity or make him sleepy. Whichever came first, but it was fine with him. It only took an hour for Noel to start nodding off, encouraged by the silence not of just the room, but in the frat house as a whole. Noel set aside his laptop, made sure his baseball bat was leaning handily against the side of the bed, and he switched off his lamp. He immediately switched it back on. Was that a shadow he saw right out of his light going out? He scanned the room. Nothing, of course. Noel decided he needed a flashlight. His lamp might not survive the night, and he kept lunging for it. Opening his nightstand drawer, Noel got a flashlight he kept there for the power outages. It was amazing how often his frat brothers overloaded the circuits and blew the breaker. Setting his flashlight to the nightstand, Noel looked around one more time and then gingerly laid his head on the pillow. He remained there for a few minutes without, as relaxed as a wooden Indian he accused Sam of being, and that thought he made him stiffen more. His lungs seemed to have shrunk. They should have made enough air. He tried to blink and got his mind. Think of good things, his mom always said when he was a little, and he was upset. When he sang a song, she always sung. And when he was cheering up, he never had a heart to tell her the song didn't do it for him. He was so fond of rainbows and kittens, but he didn't like Amber. He'd think about Amber. Amber had freckles, just a few of them. They crossed the bridge of her nose like bird tracks. Noel stiffened again. Ixnay or Erdstay, Noel told himself. He tried again. So if Amber had these freckles and she had matching trail of them, it got to the top of her chest. She noticed them peeking out of the neckline and the white tank shirts Amber liked to wear. He also liked that she stuck in jeans and white shirts. She never met a girl considered with fashion as she was, but she still managed to look great. Maybe it was a wild, shoulder-length, wavy blonde hair. Noel's eyelids started to droop. The thing did not hold his breath. He reached out and turned on his lamp. He lay still and listened. Nothing. Good. Noel closed his eyes. And the window swept open. Something hit the floor with a thud. Noel grabbed his flashlight and ended up knocking across the room. He heard it clatter against the far wall. Noel seized his bat in the dark and in his right hand and felt, with his trembling left hand for the light. He managed to turn it on without breaking the bulb. The light flooded the room and he revealed nothing. What the hell? Noel yelled. He was sure the window was open. He knew he heard something hit the floor. Did he dream it? He shook his head. No way, it sounded too real. Crossing the window, Noel checked the lock again. It was latched. Okay, fine. He'd sleep with the light on. He didn't tell Ian he could sleep pretty much anything, and he could, so he would. Noel retrieved his flashlight and set it on the nightstand. He repositioned his bed and lay down in the bed again. He took out his watch and it was 11:25. He could only call Amber and say what? Want to come over and listen to my invisible intruders with me? That'd be a line he'd never tried before. Noel threw his forearm over his eyes, but he kept his eyes open. Why did he push Sam so hard yesterday? Noel rolled over and punched the pillow. This is really the time for his psychoanalysis. He asked himself, he knew he shouldn't have taken that psychology class this semester. He did it because his advisor of psychology was helpful for all the writers and filmmakers. He hadn't prepared for how much it forced him to examine his own actions and motives. But since he didn't close his eyes yet, why not ask the hard questions? He'd known Sam was getting pissed off yesterday and he kept needling him. Why? And even more important, why would he enjoy bullying Christine so much in junior high? What is it about her that brought out the level of cruelty? Because there was no doubt about it, he'd been cruel, both in junior high and the day before. What he'd get from that? What did it make him feel better about himself? He tried to remember something useful from Psych 201 lectures. Was it mirroring? No, that was when you acted like someone else. Was it projecting? No, wasn't that putting your feelings off for someone else? Displacement? Getting closer. That was getting out your frustration and impulse on someone and someone else was threatening and what's bothering you. He might be onto something, but he was so tired. Noel's eyes closed, and he finally fell asleep. A screeching squeal somewhere between an alarm's buzz and a siren's wail. A sound that barely came in at ear-damaging levels wrenched Noel from cushy oblivion and hurled him back toward Earth. At the same time, the spine-scored lightning strike burned an image into the Blackbird into Noel's brain, marking Noel's mind like a dreadful brand. Noel fought in his way to lock back to the full consciousness, but he couldn't get all the way there. He was awake now, though he'd been dragged from sleep. But as far as he could go, he was like something holding him in place, clamping him to the strain of the weight station between thought and no thought. He literally pinned to the bed. He could even feel the stabbing pressure of something sharp digging in his skin, like a wrist and ankles. He tried to bug off the assailant, but he couldn't move at all. He was utterly paralyzed. He could feel the pressure getting stronger and stronger, pushing him deeper into his mattress. He felt like he was being compressed into nothingness. And then he still tried to battle the force above him. He poured every ounce of his will into the muscle, and he grunted and strained to get free. His confinement got worse, not better. Noel suddenly sensed an evil presence hovering over him. No, not hovering, sitting. The presence was sitting on Noel's bed, sitting on Noel. It was pressing down on him, engulfing him, insinuating himself into every part of him. And then, with a flash of light, he was free. He busted loose into his dark captivity and awoke fully that he had opened his eyes. He was completely alert. He had his bat in his hands. It was a good thing, because Noel was not alone in his room. A demonic presence was turning its fingers was poised right above his bed. So Noel swung his bat, and in a nanosecond he swung, or it was a nanosecond before he swung, the thing above Noel's bed disappeared in an eruption of feathers and spewed through the room. Then the feathers vanished into nothingness. It happened so fast Noel couldn't be sure what happened at all. All he could be sure of was it did swing the bat. He knew this because the lamp hit the floor and another bulb hit the dust. The time span in which Noel had feathered the thing in an infinitesimal, and it wasn't even a second. Noel's room went from the sound of havoc into utter silence and stillness in a blink of an eye. And yet the image of Noel had seen in the blink of an eye was burned into his retinas. Because he wasn't even the feathers, it was also seen soul-drilling benevolent yellow eyes and pointed threatening beak. Those eyes had locked onto Noel's eyes. The sharp beak had aimed itself right for Noel's guilty heart. Noel was sure it was the Blackbird, leaping over him with a malicious intent. This wasn't still a shot. It was a complete horror film playing out of his eyeballs, in the theater-known mind, without blood. Sam was right. You didn't need blood to have horror. The creep factor was horrific enough. Noel admitted the sound was half moan and half laugh. It sounded like a strangled sob of an unhinged man. How strange was it in just a few hours Noel had gone from a well-adjusted college guy to a paranoid mental case. Because he had to be crazy, right? To believe a horror that he and Sam had crafted to fly had to come to life. Noel stood and paced around the room. Adrenaline was still coursing through the system, and he needed to get it out. After 3 U-shaped passes back and forth around his bed, Noel decided one thing. His room was not big enough for his nervous energy, so Noel strolled into the closet and grabbed sweatshirts, a t-shirt, and a hoodie, socks, and running shoes. By the time Noel stepped in the bright hall, it was early sight in the frat house. He checked his watch again. It was almost 1 a.m. Wait a second. Where did the last hour and a half go? Had Noel been leaning in bed thinking about psychology for that long? Or had he been out in that incapacitated state longer than he thought? He had no idea. The hammering in his heart was drowning out any rational thought in the moment. Striding down the hall as quietly as possible, Noel darted over the stairs and ran down without a sound. It wasn't that he cared about waking up the frat brothers. He didn't want to have to explain to anyone that he was doing. He just wanted to get away. As soon as he stepped through every double doors and onto the broad front porch of the frat house, Noel Ray House rethought his actions. But he really want to go running in the dark with some creature hounding him? What if they got tired of toying with him and decided to grab him? What if it seized him and took off the way an eagle snatched a rodent? Now, that did sound insane. Did he really think the Blackbird was going to fly over and steal him off the ground? Even if some frightful rendition of Sam in his costume was coming after Noel, he didn't mean it could fly, did it? Why not? If anything had happened today was possible, anything could be possible. Noel turned and ran back up to his room. He spent the next 2 hours trying to stay awake. He was too terrified to try to go to sleep again. He did push-ups and sit-ups. He listened to music. He played games on his computer. Finally, he started watching a movie. The movie was what did him in. It was so close to the laptop, his sleep overpowered him. As soon as Noel closed his eyes, a high-pitched catering wailing sound started again. He tried to cover his ears, but again, he was paralyzed. Every time he tried to breathe against whatever force held him down, he had to push through the horror, and he still played in his head. Brutal eyes gazing into the murk of every essence, the beak like a scythe of judgment, cutting through his heart. And being numb to consciousness, inky feathered shapes streaked toward him. They retreated over and over. He felt like a fat, hopeless worm inching through the dirt. The Blackbird was merely playing with him before plucking him out of the ground and swallowing him whole. The sound of the image was tearing him apart from the inside, and still he thought, and he held in place, until he wasn't. As before, Nail came back into the land of the living as a crack of radiant light and gaping silence. As before, he was on his feet immediately, and as before, the evil trespasser disintegrated into oblivion, as it was never there. Since it clearly wasn't, even though iota of Noel's being was arguing that it was. Noel was going to lose his mind if he's going to get out of this room. Once again, Noel opened his door and headed through the frat house. This time, when he got to the porch, he couldn't let himself think. He just took off running down the brick path leading toward the quad. He had to get away, and it meant running. The campus was dead still. Noel couldn't even hear the garden in the distance. He wouldn't have been surprised to find out the campus had been isolated under a glass dome. But no, it was the real world. It seemed to be a perfectly normal campus hanging out on Earth. The night sky was black. Clouds had been blown in. Brushes drifted in the breeze and had been blowing a few hours before. An occasional torn poster or candy bar wrapper skittered over the bricks. The campus was lit by a series of wrought iron lampposts, which had cast a mesh shadow of the light over the concrete and foliage. Noel found it mildly disoriented to look at. He seemed to be a feather in every blade of grass or errant branch. Noel kept his gaze direct on the spot found on the 15 feet in front of him. So tried to keep this focus in the center of his thoughts. He'd been running as fast as he could, as if running for his life. He might have been running for his life. Something was torturing him relentlessly. How could he escape it? For now he'd run. Noel turned to look behind him. The shoe caught a tree root. He stumbled off the path into the bushes, lying on his back toward his twisted ankle and wincing in a sharp pain, but suggesting he skinned his knees and elbows. Noel threw his head back and shouted, "Enough!" He closed his eyes, and the horrendous sound started again. The chilling feather entity loomed over him. Noel opened his eyes, and of course he was alone. Noel fought his way out of the bushes, thrashing his feet, ignoring the throbbing pain in so many places cataloged. Noel said, Sam, I'm sorry." Turning a circle, Noel said it again, almost like a ritual. "Sam, I'm sorry." Quarter turn. "Sam, I'm sorry." Quarter turn. "Sam, I'm sorry." Closing his eyes for a fraction of a second, Noel confirmed that he was suspected, but his apologies weren't accomplishing anything at all, because he tried one more time, threw up his arms and scared bell. "Sam, I'm sorry." This got a response, and it got him a blinding flashlight beam in his face as the camp's cops. "Are you drunk or high?" Then Noel crossed his eyes and faced the guy. He had dark skin and closely cropped hair, and an unimpressive badge was clipped to his belt. "Neither," he said. "I'm having nightmares, so I went for a run." The campus cop shined his light on Noel's feet and the top of his head. Noel held his arms out in a way his body had to show he carried nothing. "What's your name?" The cop put his light back in Noel's eyes. Noel squinted and looked away, frowning at the spots that covered across his retinas. But hey, maybe he was blind. He wouldn't be able to see the Blackbird. He thinking of the name made him reassert himself. "Name?" the cop repeated. "Noel Markman." "Could you please not shine that right in my eyes?" The cop lowered his flashlight beam. Noel couldn't see the cop's face very well, but he didn't look much older than Noel himself. He was much taller than Noel, though, and the way he loomed over the scene reminded Noel of, "Stop it," he commanded himself. "Why are you yelling?" the cop asked. "I was trying to get something out of my system." The cop whipped the light back into Noel's eyes. "Drugs?" "No, I'm not high. I'm not drunk." He hesitated. "I did something that pissed off a friend. He's mad at me. I was just, I don't know." Camper cop lowered his flashlight again. For a few minutes, they stood in silence. Noel noticed crickets chirping when he hadn't heard if he was still running. When the cop surprised him, he said, "I get that. I wanted to say you're sorry, but you're a little pissed that he's so pissed. You're yelling that you're sorry to get anger out of your system." Noel lifted an eyebrow. "Not bad for a campus cop." "That's exactly right," he said. "Okay, well, do you think you're done yelling?" Noel asked. "Yes, I can be, yes." "Okay." Noel wanted to be sure the guy was done with him. The cop gestured down the path of the flashlight. "I suggest you keep running. It's a great way to get stuff out of your system." "Yeah, thanks." Nodded at each other, and Noel headed off again. By the time he run a mile, the barest hint of pale pink was stopping at the top of the hills in the east edge of town. Dawn was coming, and Noel hadn't really slept at all. Was he ever going to sleep again? He had to let Sam know he was sorry. Some other way than screaming in the middle of campus, but how? Noel was running back towards his frat house when he heard footfalls approaching his left. Slowing, trying not to quake in fear, Noel glanced in the direction of the footfalls, and he told himself it sounded like a person, not a bird, and he was right. "Noel!" For the first time, Noah relaxed. He didn't relax completely, but he let go of enough anxiety to kink his muscles and neck shoulders. Hi, Amber. Amber jogging in place in front of him, wearing dark blue sweats and white t-shirt. He was starting work up with a sheen of sweat. I've never seen you running in the morning before, Amber said. I don't go running in the morning. Ah, so this must be another one of your clones? No smile. And then he realized how good it felt to smile. He smiled wider. Yes. How many do you have? As many as I need all the things I don't do. Amber laughed. And do you want to run with me? Noel's clone? Sure, why not? Noel wasn't ready for even a little to face his day. He didn't have come to terms with the night. When they finished running, they ended up at the cafeteria again. He have to stop meeting like this, Amber used the hem of her shirt to wipe the sweat from her face. I never met you before, he said. That's Noel's other clone. Right, I forgot. The cafeteria doors were just opening. Enticing bacon aroma wafted through the double doors. Only a few bleary-eyed students are starting to straggle toward the building. Amber put her foot up on the railing alongside the stairs and bent over the stretch. Noel felt sweat trickling down his spine. He closed his eyes for a second, then immediately opened them wide to try to wake himself up. Then he wiped his eyes. They were dry and scratchy. Are you okay? Amber asked. I mean, seriously, you don't look so good. Well, thanks. Amber gave him a half smile. You know what I mean. Your eyes are really red. I haven't slept. All night? Noel shook his head. Anything I could do? Noel studied her. It was funny. Just now, he realized he reminded him a little of Christine, a girl he bullied in junior high. She had similar coloring and her mouth was the same shape. He wondered if that's why he never thought it was pretty until recently. Amber had been in several in the classes both previous year and this one, and he'd never seen her a second glance at a couple days before. Now he realized he liked her a lot. What is the same came trust, so he blurted, how would you fix it if you did something really wrong a long time ago, and then you did it again recently, and you can't apologize to the person you just did it to, but you're sorry and you want to make amends somehow? Amber tilted her head and pursed her lips. Guilt is keeping you awake? Something like that. Amber sat on one of the concrete steps and patted the space next to her. Noel acknowledged and greeting from the friend and sat next to Amber. The concrete was cold and damp. If it's nice that you feel guilt, it shows character. A lot of guys are so stupid to know they should feel guilty. I might have thought you were one of those. So why'd you want to go out with me? I might have thought I was wrong. Noel wasn't so sure he was. She did feel guilty because of he had character, or because he didn't want to be murdered by the Blackbird. I think guilt is like a weed. Amber lifted her face to the sun, which was starting to climb into the tops of the trees. It's best to pluck out at the root. So apologize to the first person I need to apologize to, Noel said. How does that make amends for the second person? Amber said, it's an energy thing. Yin and yang. Balance the scales in one place and the balance radiates outward. Noel wasn't so sure about that, but he had something. There you are. Noel turned his on to the girl's voice. It was Darla and her friend group. He pointed out at Amber and said, weren't you weren't where we always meet. Amber jumped up. Sorry, it's his fault. He warned. Noel grinned. He stood too. I need a shower. Amber nodded and headed back toward her friends. She turned back. Good luck. Thanks. He knew he was going to need it. How in the world was he going to find Christine Wilbur? Noel contemplated his question during his much-needed shower, and that's when he got back to his room and he stood at the window watching people head to class. He already decided he was skipping all his classes for the day, and now he grabbed the laptop and prepared for finding Christine. Looking for his bed longingly, Noel took his laptop to his desk. He was afraid he even sat in bed. He started to fall asleep. A quick internet search hadn't helped. Christine Wilbur wasn't coming up in any searches. He apparently didn't do social media, and she hadn't done anything significant enough to get a search on his radar. So how would you find her? A couple of Noel's frat brothers had been talking about Sam, and when Noel had returned to the frat house, Sam was still missing. So finding Christine was the only way for him to be safe again. Or was he just coming unhinged? What if the previous night had been only some simple sleep disorder caused by shock in the day's news? He no longer felt like it was in shock, so maybe he'd try to sleep now. He'd be okay. That even had any dark shadows or glimpses of big birds on the way to the frat house. Well, that was a good sign, wasn't it? Noel closed his eyes just briefly. He felt like he could fall asleep sitting up. Okay, that was it. He was going to lie down and sleep and forget all about Christine Wilbur and Sam and the Blackbird, since the only injuries he sustained in harrowing hours of the long night were the ones he caused himself. He had to conclude that he was a threat in his head, and that if it was in his head, he could darn well beat it. Resolved, he sat at the left side of the bed, fully dressed in jeans and a white shirt. He sighed, stretching out, and he put his head on his pillow, closed his eyes, and left him. Right into hell. The second Noel's brain wave slowed, the Blackbird appeared on a din of keying and buzzing. It was so intense it felt physical invasion, boring into Noel's ear canal. Diabolical wings leaned over Noel menacingly. Ooh, reading off into a cliffhanger. Oh, and of course, that's the end of that. But that's besides the point. You know, honestly, we were faster today. 1924. High five me. Woo! So we read faster today. It doesn't matter how fast we read. Today we read pages 41 to 60, which means we are gamers. And not gay in gamers, but gamers. Tomorrow we are reading pages we are reading pages 61 to 80, and this is actually the final episode. Very entertaining to know. I know what you're gonna say. If it's a early episode, then how come it goes straight to 80? Well, if you grab your book that you are 100% reading and not totally just listening to my voice or just looking at this video, you would see it actually ends exactly on 80, which is very nice. So next episode is more like going to be 18 pages instead of 19, but I always say 20 so I can make myself feel better. So I hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. If you like, be efficient, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!